Hey, I'm Jane. I'm your host. In this episode, I'm sharing with you a practical spirit-led technique so you can integrate it into your own practice, enabling you to connect with the Spirit of Reiki energy as a living intelligence and wise ally, as opposed to Reiki just being a concept or a technique. We'll start with why this shift matters in terms of reclaiming spiritual sovereignty, as opposed to outsourcing your power to the hierarchy of mainstream Reiki levels or lineage for authentic Reiki access. So, naturally, then we'll touch on some of the issues that you might be experiencing in your practice right now, that in my experience can be fully resolved harnessing this unrestrictive technique. And then I'll go on to walk you through the technique itself for practical spiritual embodiment. Let's dive in. Reiki isn't just energy. It's got a spirit of its own. It's a living intelligence and wise ally. And powerful connection, I've found, depends on how we each personally relate to that. Some practitioners find logical, mind-based steps really restrictive and dogmatic when it comes to building an authentic Reiki connection, sensing that there's more felt, meaningful, deeper connection available. Now, the practitioners that I work with come from everywhere on a spectrum. Some have been teaching Reiki for 15 plus years and realise their work needs to feel more them, more aligned, more coherent, more rooted in what they actually know to be true. Others are a few years in, backfilling gaps their training left behind, sensing the holes that they couldn't really name until they started looking. Some stepped away from Reiki entirely because something felt incomplete. The energetic mechanics didn't add up, the framework was feeling hollow, and they say to me that they're ready to come back to Reiki, but on their own terms. And some are entirely new to Reiki, but come to me knowing there's a personal, lineage-rooted, spirit-led approach that exists beyond what mainstream training offers. The common thread here isn't where any of us started. It's that we are all done performing someone else's system. And we crave authentic connection, practice, teaching pathway, service offering. We can each build a direct spiritual relationship with the pure, clear core of Reiki energy, not watered down or diluted in essence, not permission-based in access, i.e. access granted to Reiki via an attunement by someone else, a Reiki master, perceived to be higher up the ladder, and not connection based on someone else's cultural lineage. For example, Usui Reiki, Japanese methods, Japanese practices, Japanese techniques, which, on an innate level for folks in the West, inherently, I've come to learn, is most likely to feel fragmented and constricted because the ways in which you're connecting aren't aligned with your own ancestral, animistic, and cultural lineage. Now, in the West, we don't typically have our own cultural lineage handed down to us. We're without the wise elders who shared the ways of old, inclusive of those old healing ways with us. So, what we're left with there is to connect with ancient wisdom, where there is no right or wrong way to work with Reiki energy, because it's simply aligned with the core of who we are uniquely, inherently, innately. Reiki, of course, being universal life force energy that arguably our ancestors have used for healing for thousands of years. Often I'm asked the question, Jane, do I need Reiki training to access Reiki energy? And my response to that is always, well, if you're a practitioner who's done mainstream Reiki training and you're now backfilling the holes and gaps in your practice, you will understand the need for safe, ethical, empowering training. Because energetic entanglement is really real and really impactful for a practitioner in their own spiritual, emotional, mental, physical well-being. So yes, I believe that sovereign training is really valuable. We more commonly call universal life force energy Reiki because a particular style, Usui Reiki, was brought to the West in the 1930s by a woman named Takata. But Usui wasn't the founder of Reiki energy. That's a common misconception. We all have our own authentic, spiritually guided, that spirit-led style of connecting with the energy. In this way, Reiki isn't separate from life. It doesn't sit in a separate compartment where we go to do Reiki, whether take time out for ourselves to self-Reiki or working with a client in a client session, or somewhere we go to be spiritual. How we work with Reiki in a session with clients is a natural extension of how we lean on and integrate this relationship, not a concept or a technique, a relationship with Reiki in our own daily lives. This actually removes that need to constantly take time out to self-Reiki, to connect with or glean the benefits of this connection, because the bond can be woven really naturally, embodied in our own daily lives. Now, I'm going to cover things like weaving the Spirit of Reiki into daily life, guides in life and Reiki work, Spirit-led Reiki healing for ourselves, setting an intention for healing, and other topics in future episodes, all in keeping with rooting spiritual sovereignty, building energetic integrity, and embodying authentic medicine, which, if you listened in last week, is my exclusive root, build, embody process for sovereign Reiki reclamation. Reiki is a living intelligence and wise ally, is an animistic concept. What does that mean, Jane? Animism is the belief that all things, all energies, possess a distinct spiritual essence. This is founded in the idea that there is no categorical distinction between the spiritual and the physical worlds, that everything, as I know you are likely to know and already sense, that everything is one. Now think about chambered cairns or stone circles that our ancestors made to revere and connect with the earth and the sky, to bring them together. They knew everything was one, nothing was separate. Now, I'm a shamanic person. Shamanic people could be found on all continents of the globe before there was organised religion. Most folks commonly relate the word to North and South American indigenous people, but the term was actually coined, I believe, in the 17th or 18th century to name those folks, like I said, that were wandering the earth before there were organised religion. And we don't always tend to live in harmony, with all things, with the land, with nature, with all energies any longer in our modern day world, do we? There's normally some kind of hierarchy, human beings deemed more important than animals, or someone at the top of the tree, whether the Reiki master in inverted commas or the CEO of a company, being deemed more important than those below them. Animism, i.e., understanding that everything, including Reiki energy, has a spirit, by its very nature is a non-hierarchical approach to working with the energy via your own direct spiritual connection. And that can be a little bit more challenging sometimes to get our heads around, given our cultural beliefs in the West, those ingrained since we came into the world, lacking those elders that I mentioned before. Now, given all of this, Reiki has a colour, a feeling, a texture, a look, a sensation, however it works for you. And it is different for everybody and everyone without exception. This is irrespective of whether you've been a Reiki master teacher for many years or you are new to Reiki today, can connect in this way. I have seen it without exception hundreds and hundreds of times. Experience, i.e., years of Reiki training or being on a spiritual path or working with energy, doesn't equal ability to connect in this way. That's a mainstream Reiki myth, and it keeps us away from our power. It gatekeeps. It's about the ability to trust beyond logic, and no amount of experience in the traditional sense can shadow that trust. To connect with Reiki as a living intelligence and wise ally, we spirit-led Reiki journey to access the spiritual realm and meet the spirit of Reiki energy as it presents uniquely for each of us. We can then start creating a relationship with Reiki an animistic connection from there. This is the unrestrictive technique that we're going to learn today. Spirit-led Reiki journey space is also called non-ordinary reality. When we're in non-ordinary reality, or NOR for short, we are in an altered state of consciousness, as you would expect, because we aren't operating within the physical realm of consciousness. We are within the spiritual realm of consciousness. Again, I can't stress enough that anybody can learn how to connect in this space, whether you've been on a Reiki or spiritual path for years, months, days, or you're coming to this episode fresh, absolutely new. Distance, space and time bear no relevance in journey space. Everything is one. And we're going to come back to cover why that's important in another episode where we chat more on spirit-led Reiki journeying for healing access for yourself from the Spirit of Reiki energy. Working with Reiki as a living intelligence and wise ally means connection is authentic, non-dogmatic and unrestrictive in my experience. Those are the biggest disparities between mainstream Reiki training and Spirit-led Reiki. If you're asking questions like, how do I know when I'm connected to Reiki energy? Why do I not feel Reiki like I thought I would, or like my friend does when they practice? What do I use if I'm not using symbols? Do I need to work in a specific order, or indeed use my hands? How do I unearth my authentic style, connection, practice, teaching pathway, or service offering? How do I backfill any of the missing gaps from mainstream Reiki training? How do I merge modalities together to create something that feels like it's for me? Why do I absorb my client's energy, and how do I stop that from happening? I feel like I want to work with Reiki, but in a non-traditional sense, perhaps with the land or with kids or with animals, but I want to be safe and ethical in doing that. These are some of the tip of the iceberg common questions that find their way to me. And this is the place to start. This episode is the place to start in answering your own question for yourself. Now, in a moment, we're going to cover how you can take yourself on a spirit-led Reiki journey to meet the spirit of Reiki energy as a living intelligence and wise ally. And I'd really encourage you to do this part, to take the action. It's one thing listening to me sharing, understanding, talking, taking it in with the mind, but it's another thing to integrate what you're learning on an emotional and spiritual level. And that's what Spirit-led Reiki journeying will allow you to do. That's what creates the embodied connection part, the relationship with Reiki as the living intelligence and wise ally. Mainstream Reiki is theory-based, like classroom learning. That's why, with Reiki being an intuitive and spiritual modality, when mainstream Reiki training only focuses on mental body learning and connection, that's the theory, it's not even half of the equation. Practitioners miss a pathway to emotional body learning and connection, that's intuitive clarity, and spiritual body learning and connection, that's your felt relationship with the spirit of Reiki energy, with your guides, with your spiritual self. This technique is unrestrictive because whilst I provide you with some theoretical steps, the mental body learning and connection, you're taking it in right now, you're listening to me, ultimately, the spirit of Reiki energy paves the way forwards to craft authentic connection. And that's different for everyone because the intelligence itself holds wisdom and it will meet every single one of us in a different way, in a way that is right for us. Now, there's a link below this podcast episode in the notes, and it's going to take you to a page of free how-to PDFs. You want to have sight for this next part of the top 2 PDFs. So they're called How to Spirit-led Reiki Journey to Meet the Spirit of Reiki so you can build a relationship with the energy as a living intelligence and wise ally. And the PDF below that is called The 6 Safeguarding Principles for Spirit-led Reiki Journeying to Meet the Spirit of Reiki Energy. I'd suggest that you pause me now, grab those so you've got sight of them, grab a notepad and a pen if you feel like you might need it, and then come back. So I'm briefly going to talk you through the safe guiding principles to begin with. These PDFs complement each other. Okay, so some of the information you will notice overlaps. If you follow these safe guiding principles, you will always be working safely and ethically in terms of connecting with the spiritual realm, otherwise known as non-ordinary reality. Now, if you're a practitioner working back the way to fill in holes and gaps in your practice, and perhaps you are aware that you have started to become entangled with clients' energy, or you have started to be able to pick up on some spiritual insights, you may be fearful of them, or you don't know what they mean exactly, then you'll understand the need for really safe practice when it comes to working with unseen energy. Okay, of course, that's what we're doing when we're working with Reiki. We're working with the unseen. That's why these safe guiding principles are important. You'll notice here on the second page, I pay reference to the fact that intention is always needed when we go into journey space, when we're working with energy. And that's because intention is the focused mental and spiritual energy that guides actions, whether that be actions in daily life or the spiritual energies and entities that you're working with, i.e., Reiki energy and your guides, towards a specific outcome. It's a bit like going on a car journey to an unknown destination and plugging the postcode in, or the zip code, depending upon where you are in the world, to get to that location. You're going to get there fairly easily. By comparison to getting into the car, not having a map, never having been there before, and you're making a 4-hour journey, you've no idea where you're going. Okay, that's the difference between using an intention and not. So step one is opening sacred space, and I'm going to cover this a wee bit more in depth just now. We always open what's called sacred space and close sacred space when we're working in a healing setting, when we're connecting with the spiritual realm, when we're spirit-led Reiki journeying. And this is for a really specific reason. We want to create a safe, energetic container to work within. Okay? So as an example, everything is, when it comes to healing work, and I think that mainstream Reiki sometimes doesn't pay nod to this enough because, of course, as I mentioned before, there is no great supportive pathway to intuitive clarity or spiritual wisdom reconnection. It's all about feeling into what works for you, trying it. I mean, don't hang yourself at the altar of getting it wrong, trying it, working out what feels natural and brilliant. For us, it's magical. Working with energy is magical. So find a way of opening and closing space that feels like it works for you. It's very symbolic. Okay, so as one bare minimum basic example, you may want to light a candle and say out loud or in your head, I open sacred space. You're setting that intention, you're opening the sacred space. And at the end, you're going to do the same thing. You're out loud or in your head, I close sacred space, and you're going to blow out that candle. Okay, so that's you creating your safe energetic container. We should always be working and living in, really, from my experience, a cleansed space. Okay, space is an energy like everything else. It can either be empowering or it can be draining. So you might want to look at being within a cleansed space there when you're undertaking any type of spirit-led Reiki journey. There are many ways that you can cleanse space. I like to use a herb native to the land I live on. I feel more connected with it. So I grow myself a little pot of rosemary alongside other things. I let some rosemary dry out, I bind it with a bit of twine, and I let the smoke cleanse the space. You can cleanse the space by rattling, drumming, using sound, clapping your hands, whatever feels right for you. With the smoke, when I'm smoke cleansing, I just move around the room, letting the smoke go wherever it needs to go. You will find many people online tell you there's a right and a wrong way to smoke cleanse, working from this part of the room to that part of the room, etc., etc. Go with how you feel called to work. Okay? So we're opening space, we're within a cleansed space, and we're always going to remember to close space at the end. Step 2 is have a simple, clear intention. Now, for this journey specifically, I've given you a journey, an intention, to work with in the journey. The intention for this journey is to meet the Spirit of Reiki energy as it presents for you uniquely. That's your intention. Okay. 3 is always remember to go with a member of your trusted spiritual team, your guides. Important. You do not need to know who they are. You just need to ask them to be present. That's it. We then trust. This is actually how you start to build connection and relationship. Okay? So to recap, we've opened sacred space. We're inside an energetically cleansed space. We have a simple, clear intention. We know we need to welcome in our guides, saying out loud or in our head that we welcome our guides into this space and we want them to be present with us. 4 is a reminder. This will be meaningful to some of you who have perhaps been on a path where you are already keenly tuned in to receiving spiritual information and insight. Don't ever barter with the spiritual realm. Everything from Spirit, the Spirit of Reiki energy and your guides comes freely and without obligation. Initially, this principle set me off kilter a little bit. I was a little bit fearful of what it meant. I have never, in all the years and all the experiences working for myself or other people, had a spirit ask me to exchange something with them, bartering with me, because I don't welcome it in. Okay? Now, if you're thinking to yourself, yeah, Jane, that is something that actually does apply to me, that has applied to me before. Not everyone will be like this. Some of you might be. Then you might want to come back and listen into a future episode where I'm going to cover working with your spirit-led guardian guide. 5, close space. I've made reference to it before. And take notes. Take any notes of anything that may come up for you within journey space. Sometimes experiences are really quiet. Other times not so. You might be thinking to yourself, well, the Spirit of Reiki energy didn't come forward for me. I didn't feel like the Spirit of Reiki energy was there. Then when we look at the next PDF, I'll touch on that a little bit more. The Spirit of Reiki energy is always there. You're more than welcome to come over into my free online community for more one-to-one support where you can ask me questions. You can tell me about your experience and we can help decipher how the Spirit of Reiki energy presents uniquely for you. We place a lot of focus on sight in our culture. If we can't see it, it's not real. You will not always see the Spirit of Reiki energy. It presents differently for everybody. 6, make sure you are present. You will be present coming out. It's a really safe way to work with the spiritual realm. In this sense, you will be present and grounded coming out of the space. But if not, or if you want to ground yourself a little bit further, there are a multitude of ways that you can do that. Okay, you already use grounding practices. You don't always need to go outside and put your feet in the ground for grounding practices. You can drink a warm cup of tea. Take some lovely long deep breaths. Use a visualization technique. I like to use a red rope. I see it coming from the crown of my head all the way down through the middle of my body, splitting out, coming out the soles of my feet and pulling me down, deep down to the core of the earth below me. Okay, those are some simple ways to ground. So if you'd like to just grab the other PDF so we can link these two together, like I said before, there are some overlaps, but I just want to talk you through that. On the first page here, I'm explaining what Spirit-led Reiki journey into meet the Spirit of Reiki energy is, why we would do that. Before we begin, you'll notice that 2, deciding on an intention, we've already covered, and I've already given you one of those to use should you wish to use it. I recommend you do use that one specifically for this journey. 3, we've covered always journey with a trusted guide. Now, number 1, we haven't covered. Find a drumming track to use. You can find drumming tracks for free inside my free online community, and you can use those on repeat, on loop, to find a length of drumming track that works for you. Here I'm recommending a good 30 minutes and at medium beat. I'm also explaining to you why we would use a drumming track to access the spiritual realm. So the steps for journeying: set sacred space. We've already covered that. I delved into that a little bit when we were looking at the other PDF. You want to put your drumming track on and bring yourself into the space. That's number 2 and 3. Wee bit direction there on how to do that. 4, welcome your trusted guide into the space. And 5, state your intention. 4 and 5, out loud or in your head. I like to personally do that out loud. I feel that obviously my words carry weight. Words are energy. So I always like to say things out loud. I've given some tips there as well, like write down 4 and 5. Keep it close to you if you need to be reminded. You know, there are no rules here. Okay, this isn't a test. This isn't do everything perfectly. This is learning a bit of a structure that's unrestrictive for you to take, adjust, adapt, apply in a way that works for you and gain confidence with that. Number 6, close over your eyes and breathe. Okay, number 7, when the drumming stops and you've finished, close the space. As I mentioned before, you might do that by blowing out the candle. That might be your representation of closing space, however that works for you. Number 8, write down anything that you want to remember. Trust me, you will forget. You will forget. I've added here some points to note. Would really like to hone in on that second bullet point there. You might hear, see, sense the Spirit of Reiki energy. It's going to be different for everybody. Okay. You might think you've not met the Spirit of Reiki energy. You will absolutely meet the Spirit of Reiki energy in this journey space. Ask me in the free online community if you need further support with that. Again, the link for that's in the podcast notes. Falling asleep, it does happen. It doesn't mean you're doing anything wrong. Practice helps. Now, if you're going to do this journey, I recommend you do this journey once. Recommend this with all journeys, no matter the healing intention, and let the experience settle. Let it settle. Take some hours, take some time. It's almost like it mulls at the back of your head whilst you go about your normal everyday life, okay? And things can come to light and start making a little bit of sense that initially they didn't. So just give time to integrate, okay? As I mentioned before and said we would come back to, you won't always see the Spirit of Reiki energy. We do place so much focus on sight in our culture. Some people may never see their guides, the Spirit of Reiki energy. It's merely one way to experience a spiritual relationship. Okay? All right. That's us covered how to Spirit-led Reiki journey to meet the Spirit of Reiki energy as a living intelligence and wise ally. I would love to hear how you get on with this. If you try it, as I said, you're absolutely more than welcome in our free online community. Now, I've noticed sometimes practitioners can be fairly great, really good at recognising when something is feeling off, disconnected, fragmented in their professional practice, but often far less keen to address resolving that at the root rather than just using a stick and plaster. When they identify the resolution lies in personal practice, which is always the case with spirit-led work because we can't bypass. Everything is a natural extension of who we are as a unique individual. There is no performance element. There can be a lot of, I shouldn't need to do this. I should be here already. Is this really that important? I'll just keep going and trying to figure it out alone. That's operating from the very same place that created whatever it is that's feeling off, disconnected, fragmented in your practice when you're working with clients in the first place. It's a cultural wound, going it alone, not needing support, harsh self-judgment and overly critical words. To allow change to unfold, I've found We've got to take the opportunity for change when it's presented. This isn't about replacing one dogma with another. It's about returning to the source of power. I look forward to chatting with you again next episode. The mainstream Reiki narrative is incomplete. You already know this. You're rejecting prescribed methods, you're reclaiming your unique way of working, you're trusting your intuition more and more. And from that threshold, that place where you've deconstructed, but you're still finding your way, something becomes visible. What if the next frontier isn't more rejection, it's deeper integration? Not integration of the fragments you've been piecing together alone, but integration of what you already know to be true, with coherent spiritual architecture that lets you live it from a place of authentic personal power. What becomes possible when you root yourself in your own ancestral lineage as your true Reiki lineage, not borrowed lineage authority. Build with advanced spiritually guided frameworks that support empowered evolution, not depletion, and embody your unshakably aligned exclusive connection, practice, service offering, or teaching style. You can stay tethered to someone else's framework, qualified but carrying their lineage contradictions, intuitive but feeling restricted, fragmented by the gap between what you know and what you were taught. Or you can answer the call. Lifting the Veil on Reiki is my free on-demand 30-minute workshop. It's linked in the podcast notes for you.